Hello Internet, my name is Father Casey Cole. I'm a Franciscan friar and Catholic priest, and today I'm answering your questions about what it means to be a friar. Let's see what you're curious about. What exactly is a friar? Where does the word come from and when was it first used? I guess this is a good place to start. Despite the common misconception, the word friar doesn't actually mean priest, it means brother. From the Latin frater, or the Old French frere, is a term used to describe a man in a religious order, particularly of the four mendicant religious orders: Franciscan, Dominican, Augustinian, and Carmelite. Each of these orders was founded in the 12th or 13th centuries. What material are habits usually made out of, and how are they washed? So the thing I'm wearing is called a habit, and originally they were made out of whatever material was available, mostly wool, stitching together various pieces of fabric in a humble way. The cloth was supposed to be undyed, nothing fancy, ranging from light gray to brown to even black. Today, the color, material, and cut is pretty standardized, with most habits being made out of a polyester blend. It breathes better, and it's much easier to take care of. You just throw it in the wash with everything else. What would you do if you met a woman that you fancy? Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like had you chose to get married instead? Literally almost every day. But not in a longing for something else or out of regret, but in Thanksgiving. Admittedly, I spent much of my time between the ages of 13 and 22 in relationships and always thought that I was going to get married. That might have been great had I chosen that path. Sometimes I see a beautiful woman or a happy family and have a small feeling of envy. But then I remember who I am and what I get to do as a friar. I live in brotherhood, dedicate my life to service, celebrate the sacraments, and I can't imagine doing anything else. I don't know if this is sharing too much, but every so often I will have a dream about meeting and falling in love with a wonderful woman, either before I met the friars or having to leave the friars to be with her. But every dream ends the same, with me feeling sick and upset because I don't want to leave the friars. The therapist told me one time that it's actually common among addicts in recovery to dream about their past life in this way, confirmation from their subconscious that they've made the right choice and don't want to go back. Marriage might have been great, but it's just not for me. I love this life and would never want to leave it. And so as for the question of what happens if I meet a woman, well, I'll tell you, I already have. Multiple times I've fallen in love even as a friar, and I'm still here. Are you allowed to have jobs outside of the spiritual service of others? For example, being a doctor, artist, musician, lawyer, entertainer, or performer? The rule and life of the Friars Minor is this: namely, to observe the holy gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ by living in obedience, without property, and in chastity. That's the first line of the rule of St. Francis, and you could argue that he never wanted anything beyond this. Unlike the Dominicans, who are focused on teaching and preaching, or the Benedictines on work and prayer, there is no specific ministry a Franciscan must do. All St. Francis said was that we need to do work and to live the gospel. Franciscans can and have served as medical doctors, therapists, musicians, lawyers, barbers, janitors, cooks, maintenance men, architects, designers. You name it, we've probably done it. Sometimes these talents are used within the church itself, but sometimes we're employed by secular institutions. That's perfectly fine. How does the order accommodate for or include brothers and priests with disabilities? Things like autism, ADHD, anxiety, or depression. Would any of these conditions be considered a barrier to entering religious life? So these are all really good questions, but they're difficult to answer definitively or universally. The admissions process is personalized, varying from person to person. As far as I know, we do not dismiss a candidate solely for a disability. There are brothers within our order with learning disabilities and physical limitations that are happy, productive members of the order, and that's awesome. But we also have to consider the challenges of fraternal life and the vow of poverty. If someone requires so much assistance that they can't live independently or poses a great financial risk of medical costs, we will likely have to prevent them from entering. Once they're in and solemnly professed, if they develop these things afterwards, we're brothers through thick and thin, meaning that we take care of each other no matter what. Why are there different types of Franciscan friars if, by virtue of the name, they are all supposed to follow St. Francis of Assisi? If only it were that simple. St. Francis was not St. Ignatius of Loyola. He did not have a systematic formation program. There were no carefully thought out procedures for how we were to live and work. Francis wanted us to live the gospel and famously said on his deathbed, "The Lord has shown me what is mine to do. Let him show you what is yours to do." Even while Francis was alive and leading, there were different factions of friars emphasizing different aspects of our life. Some wanted to live poverty more rigorously, while some wanted to emphasize the fraternal life. Some thought that we should only serve the poor, while others wanted to get an education and teach the faith. All of this is good, but over the years, these differences in emphasis have led to splits, each following Francis in the way they feel is most authentic. Why would someone feel a call to be a lay brother as opposed to a priest in a religious order? Well, the same reason that people feel called to marriage instead of becoming a priest. Some people just don't have a calling to ordination. For most people, celibacy is the biggest reason they would never consider religious life, so the thought of someone joining religious life and not becoming a priest makes no sense. But ordination to the priesthood is still a vocation. You still have to feel called to do the work of a priest. Some friars, in fact, many young friars today, don't feel this call. They want to live the gospel. They want to live in fraternity in a simple lifestyle, but spend their day caring for the poor or teaching, not celebrating the Eucharist or hearing confessions. In D&D, do you play as a cleric, a paladin, or a monk? I'm sorry to say that I don't play D&D, and so I don't entirely understand the question, but I think I know someone who can answer this for you. Father Tito, you want to take this one?
I love this question. Thank you very much. This is the right person to ask. So what I would say to this is that I would go something different from my day-to-day life. Not a monk, not a paladin, nothing like that. Rather, I would be a halfling, maybe a gnome, something of small stature, something that works with their hands. So I would be maybe an artificer, and my alignment would probably be lawfully good. That's kind of different from what I am right now. I tend to function more like a chaotic good person. For Father Casey, on the other hand, I would do something completely different from his personality. So rather than being like a warrior or a traditional kind of soldier, I would make him into a half-elf thief or maybe an investigator with chaotic good alignment. So something where he has to think outside the box. He has different kind of morals than the rest of the world might have.
Can someone switch religious orders within the church, like Franciscan to Dominican or Benedictine? Yeah, absolutely. It's not very common for someone of one of the mendicant orders to switch to another mendicant order, say from Franciscan to Dominican, but it's not unheard of for a Franciscan to move to retreat from the world towards a monastic order like the Benedictines or Carthusians, devoting their life to work and prayer, or to move more towards the world, becoming a diocesan priest, dedicating themselves to a parish or a diocese. I wouldn't say that it's easy or encouraged, but changes like this can happen, and they're not entirely frowned upon either. Could you become a bishop if selected? Technically, yes. Religious priests can be asked by the Holy Father to be consecrated a bishop and take on the leadership of a diocese. In order to do this, though, he would have to leave the religious order, as a bishop can't exactly be the chief shepherd of his diocese while at the same time keeping a vow of obedience to his religious superior. You can't serve two masters. Now, is this likely to happen? I seriously hope not. Being a bishop is just a different job than being a priest, and an entirely different vocation from being a Franciscan. I don't know if you can actually turn down a request to be a bishop, but I can tell you in the extremely unlikely chance that I ever get that call, we're gonna find out. Are inter-friar relationships more peaceful and less tense than in the non-friar world? Is there less egoism, intrigue, and power plotting? Thankfully, yes. And sadly, no. For the most part, and in almost every situation, Franciscans are just a little different from the rest of the world. We desire to be collaborative and community. We want to help people. We seek peaceful relationships over personal wants. By and large, I have experienced leaders who are good, humble men in the order. The reason I say no, however, is because you never stop being human once you join religious life. We still have egos. We still get defensive. We still have interpersonal problems and don't always get along with everyone. Being a friar is definitely different from the rest of the world, but I would hate for someone to have an image of us as some idyllic, heavenly community where nobody has any issues. It's simply not the case. We're still sinners, and that can be frustrating at times. At our best, what makes us different is not that we're without sin, but that we're open about it and willing to work on it together. What sorts of things do friars do to help with today's issues like poverty, hunger, dignity of life issues, and so on? You name it, and we're probably a part of it in some way. We have more than 10,000 friars around the world working in soup kitchens, bread lines, foreign missions, social service agencies, and shelters. We work in institutions of higher learning, giving opportunities to socially disadvantaged people and educating about the issues of the world. We even work with NGOs, political action groups, and even the United Nations itself, seeking to bring justice in areas of poverty and war. Living the gospel is about more than just being a nice person. It's about inserting Jesus Christ into every aspect of society to bring light to the darkness. And finally, and maybe most importantly, how do I join? I thought you'd never ask. Being a Franciscan friar is a wonderful vocation, and I hope that you will seriously consider it for yourself, or maybe even someone you know. If you're living within the United States and between the ages of 21 and 45, you can learn more by visiting our vocation website at friars.us/become a friar. For those outside the US, you can go to ofm.org/en/contactyourprovince.html to find the vocation office in your country. Both of these links are in the description of this video and all videos. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. If you have any additional questions, please leave them in the comments and I will do my best to get to as many as I can.